So I guess we're recording. William, I am very, very happy that you're actually part of this. You are a winner from many years past, from 2012 at the YDA.
2012, yeah.
And as you know, I actually have started this little conversation pieces with people that have been part of the YDA as winners to try and figure out where they've ended up, where they come from, just a little conversation in the chat. You right now, I think, are in the middle of nowhere, Denmark, right?
Yeah.
Up in the north, in the countryside. So if the connection is kind of a little iffy, it's because you are in the middle of nowhere.
It's my bad, yeah.
But that said, first of all, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. And I'm all good. It's been a bit of a lockdown for the last 3 months, and I've been working on a short film, which is finished at the end of the week. And so I haven't really found that I've been too paralyzed by the elections and everything, and I guess we're quite lucky in Denmark that we've come out a bit earlier than Europe.
Yeah.
So things feel kind of back to normal here.
Well, we've been back to normal, but it's kind of back to abnormal, really. It just feels like that. But
it's a good way to put it.
So let me ask a question, which I actually am always very interested in. What is your background family-wise? It's like, do you come from a creative family? Before you became a director?
No.
I mean, is your family actually?
Yeah.
Did they teach you creativity in the family, or what?
No. Yeah, interesting question. I don't think that my family is uncreative, but none really has a career out of creativity, and creativity always been a actually, I grew up in Botswana, which is just above South Africa, and I went to a boarding school in South Africa. The schools in Botswana were a little bit limited when I was at primary school age. And yeah, I came from an environment where it was very hard to consider creativity as a viable lifestyle. Yeah. I think most of my friends are in business, accountants or, business managers or lawyers or bankers. And yeah, I, to be honest, didn't really have many opportunities for mentorship, or I didn't really understand how you could make a good living or any kind of life from creativity. I think that I spent a good 3 to 4 years after high school trying to convince myself of that before I told myself film was a direction I could take.
And why do you think you? I mean, it's interesting that you then ended up being, creative. So you actually bumped into it somehow in life, right? So you were telling me that you were a producer for a while, right? How did you end up kind of getting into this whole business?
Yeah. So, I mean, a quick summary of what had happened before film, life before film was I got an undergraduate degree in Cape Town studying law. And I was at the University of Cape Town. I realized in my first year that I wanted to do something more creative with my life, and I was 19 years old. I was at that age where I felt like whatever direction I was going in was going to be permanent, and I didn't want to go down the law route for too long.
Yeah.
And so I eventually finished with just a very general Bachelor of Arts in History and Philosophy. I managed to convert my credits.
Yeah.
And then I went to film school in Vancouver. So I looked around at a couple of different film schools and found that there was a 1-year course in Vancouver. There was also, at the time, there was, NYFA, New York Film Academy had a 9-month course.
Yep.
I was looking for something that could kind of crash me into the film industry and teach me the vocabulary, like teach me how to get in.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, a foundation course, like that's all it was. You know, I don't think I really learned that much about the industry in that year.
Yeah.
But I moved. I'm taking you on the long way around. But I moved to
Oh,
Ireland.
that's interesting.
After that, I was dating. I was dating a Spanish girl. I needed to be in Europe to be close to her. I didn't speak Spanish, and I realized that if I moved to Ireland, I have like ancestral links in Ireland, and if I stayed there for a little while, I could eventually become a Irish citizen. And to me, that was quite important. I felt like being a South African, I was quite limited.
Yep.
I needed visas for everywhere in the world, and it was kind of like a life decision. Get yourself the right like freedom to travel,
Yep.
because if I'm going to do a job where I didn't really know what, to be honest, I didn't know what commercials directing was back then. So it was a
Yeah.
decision that really helped me now, because you leave at the drop of a hat and you are somewhere new, you know, a week after winning a job or something.
Yep.
But yeah, I started in Ireland, and I started doing script editing for a feature
Yep.
film company. Well, not even editing, sorry, reading. I was just reading
Yep.
scripts for a producer and
Yep.
giving her a breakdown on whether she should read them or not.
Continue
So I was kind of
or be
cutting through.
yeah.
I was her filter, yeah. And I only did that for a couple of months until I got an opportunity to help open a small commercials production company, and it was on
Yep.
the back of a feature company or a short film company called Venom Films, and
Yep.
they flipped it around for commercials. They called it Antidotes, and
Nice.
it was a brand new thing. It was a producer called Andrew Friedman, who was 28 at the time. I think I was 23,
Yep.
and he had a director, Ken Wardrop, who he'd been doing films with, and they'd won a couple of awards at Sundance for
Yep.
shorts, documentary
Yep.
shorts. And so it was like, I felt like there was a touch of credibility there, that we could start a
Yep.
company. And anyway, Andrew just gave me all the responsibilities.
Yep.
He just said he was busy with a feature film. I needed to find directors to sign.
Yep.
I needed to take those directors to ad agencies and pitch them. I needed to help the directors win the jobs, write treatments, put budgets together. And I mean, it all seemed like an awesome jump in the deep end, but you know, we were really unknown. I was really unknown in Ireland. And yeah, for the first 9 months, I don't think we really did any kind of job of any. We didn't really do anything except me
Startup.
just like beating the streets.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think at the time I realized that I was arriving in a new country. I had no links to
Yep.
crew or camera
Yep.
houses, or like if I wanted to become a director, I needed a network first. And actually being a producer or an assistant producer, it was the um, it was the
The,
fastest way to become a
the
network.
jumping, right? Like
Yeah.
the middle ground to actually get to where you wanted to get to, right? That's,
Yeah, I mean, I was making all the phone calls to the camera
yep.
houses and negotiating
Yep.
deals, and trying to show loyalty, so that like one day if I had to ask a favor, I'd be able to say, hey, I've given you guys 10
Yep.
jobs or
Yep.
something. And like little did I know in the first year that 10 jobs was like 2 years away. But it took a
Yeah.
long time. But I mean, yeah, we I think in the back of my mind, I knew that I really enjoyed producing, and I could have continued my career as a producer, but I felt like I wanted to be a little bit more connected to the creative. I wanted to be making creative decisions, and I wanted to. I felt like I had something to say in my work, and I wanted to be able to steer things my way. And obviously, as a producer, you're supporting
Oh,
another director's
yeah.
vision, and
Obviously,
so
yeah.
yeah, I was lucky to learn from a couple of great directors, like young up and coming guys. But for me, it also meant I was on set, and I could see what they
Yeah.
were doing. I could see what the decisions
Yes.
were. I could understand, like, not only the creative vision in a treatment, which is actually super easy to write
Yes.
down. It's then like fighting
Yeah.
fires on
Yeah.
set. Like, how does this all come together, and like what are the compromises which happen, once a minute for the whole
Obviously,
project.
Those words are really nice and beautiful, and then they always work when they're on a piece of paper. Then when you have to intersect them with reality,
Yeah.
I always say with gravity, like
Exactly.
with literally like the force of gravity, because you're like, they have to become real. Then it becomes a whole different story.
The reality kicks
exactly.
in. The reality kicks in, and your locations are not as nice, and the sun doesn't rise on the right side of the room, and suddenly everything falls
you
apart. But
shoot at the time
anyway,
of day that you wanted to shoot at and all that. So anyway, you were saying, go.
Exactly, yeah. So I mean, I got some good experience. I think Ireland is actually a pretty busy commercials industry, and by year 3, we were starting to shoot more consistently and getting jobs for different directors. So one week we were on a documentary piece for a charity, and the next week we were on like a kind of light comedy piece, and I was kind of jumping around trying to be involved in all of that. But yeah, I also realized there were a few directors coming up at that time in Ireland who had been quite successful. One of them was Gary Shaw, who went on to do feature films like Dracula Untold, and at the time, like Gary had done a test commercial that I think was successful, and I realized like test commercials are actually the way to go. And there was another director, same age as me, Stevie Russell, who became a friend, and he also won something at the YDA the year before. And I mean, I think like the YDA has become so much more competitive. I think that the type of test commercials that are made now are really, really strong. But I remember learning about that and kind of telling myself, if you don't win an award for a test commercial, there's no point in doing it, because it's got no audience. Like no one's really going to see it. But at the time, I realized that I was saying this to the directors that we represented. We had a lot of young guys just out of film school, and we were saying, let's put some money aside for you guys to do test commercials, because if you're waiting for agencies to send you nice scripts, they're going to send you something based on what you've done already. You're not going to get the perfect job on a gamble. And after a little while, I think the directors that we were working with didn't. I think there was about 6 months that went by where no one had really locked a test commercial idea that they wanted to do, and I was starting to get impatient and starting to realize I had a couple of ideas that maybe I could try, and that's what happened. So that
Very
was I think I wrote something. I wrote an idea. I mean, this is the commercial that won at YDA. I wrote an idea about I was really into car commercials, and I was into that kind of moody, poetic style that was actually really big back then, even more than it is now. And I think I just wanted to do something a little bit evocative, where it was about a man going through some kind of change in his life or learning something, and I sort of told myself that there's kind of a good journey in the fact that this guy needs a vehicle to get him to all the places that are going to let him learn and see and grow as a person. And so I ended up doing the story about a guy who learns the secret of life, and when he has learned everything he needs to know, he gives the key to someone else to learn those same lessons. And at the time, I think I scrapped together about €1,000, and that's where all of these favors came in. We got some camera gear for free. I was coming up at a very similar time to another cinematographer, Piers McGrail, who came and shot the project. Literally,
it really does look.
Thank you. Well, it's
8
old
years
now.
later, with all the things that might be, 8 years in, of advertising, which has a whole different, look and feel. Maybe today it looks amazing. It's like it still looks very strong, and it kind of like
Thank you.
consolidated, I think, you with your own self, trying to figure out what you want to be, what kind of director you want to be, which then has a lot of the tastes that you have in the director that you are today. So you actually did what you were telling your directors to do, right? It's like put in your spec spots the things that make you the director that you want to be, the type of work that you want to do, right? So you actually did exactly what you were telling them, right? So do you feel that that was a good, I would guess that was a very good representation of what kind of director that you are, or that you want to be, right?
I think the concept, yes, the concept was very much like, this is the kind of work I want to be doing. I have to say, I can't take like all the credit for the look. You know, if you see my original treatment, I wrote a treatment to sell it to my, the company, Andrew and Ken, who were really helping, ultimately giving the thing green light and kind of putting the company name behind it. And I think that the treatment that I wrote had beautiful sun flare and underwater shots with waves, and it was like a buffet of visual, like it was just going to be incredible. And then it was February in Ireland, and it was just raining every single day, and it was dark, and I was like, I'm not going to get a single sun flare for this whole month probably. And I have to say, like, the whole project, I mean, I can't believe it's 8 years already. But that whole project was it was really fun. We had a lot of fun. I felt a kind of pressure inside that this had to work, but it was very serendipitous. That actor was not an actor. He was a barman at a place in town that I went to, and I just loved his look, and I bought a beer and said off him, and I said, hey, look, man, you look really cool. Would you like to walk around the west of Ireland with me for 2 days and let me film you doing it? And he was like, yeah, that sounds kind of cool. But I have to say, like, that project, I was hoping for all these crazy lighting conditions, and in the end, Pearch just kind of stabled. He made me a little more secure about it when we woke up on the first day and there was no sun, and he said, let's just shoot the darkness. Let's make it rugged and wild, and just embrace the fact that there is no sun. And like, for me, that was a little scary. I was so to answer your question about this aesthetic, did I set an aesthetic that I really wanted? I don't think I had much choice. Like, it just became this dark, moody thing. And at the time, dark and moody was actually kind of a growing style in commercials. And probably for about 2 years after that, everything I got sent was like, can you do the dark and moody like the Jaguar test commercial? And I was like, I can. I love that style, but that's not. I didn't set out to be that guy at one point.
That's interesting, because I think it's interesting, like that your background is so diverse, right? South Africa, Botswana, your Spanish girlfriend, Ireland, which is actually an interesting world, as you said. It actually, it's a small advertising community, but it's a very productive one, and it's a good place to actually grow. So, you grew as a producer, wanting to be a director. You probably got a couple of your directors angry by doing your spec spot. I don't know if that's true, but I would guess so. It's like, and
I know there was definitely a moment where your producer, as a director, you trust with everything, and you share all of your vision, and there was definitely a moment where a couple of the directors I was their go-to point of contact, and they were like, hang on, you're kind of trying to eat from our plate now, there was a moment.
I can imagine. And then that's what you wanted to do, which I find interesting, because I think I asked you a question about creativity, and you actually looked for it, right? You actually went for it. You went through a process and very carefully kind of got your way into something that you actually felt was going to be your way of communicating creativity, which was directing, right? And from that point onwards, you kind of I don't know, put a mark. You kind of wrote your name, director William Armstrong, right? Did did you feel like the YDA actually helped you when you won? I mean, when you won the YDA, do you think there was a before the YDA and after the YDA moment?
I mean, 100% yes. Like that was like one of the most exciting moments of my life, I think. Because I'd been thinking about directing since I was,
Yeah,
17. I didn't really know what directing was, but I
yeah,
was thinking about it, and I was watching movies and thinking someone has been behind all of these
yeah,
decisions. Someone is showing their taste in storytelling, in action, in drama, because um, you know because someone gets to sit in that seat, and I felt like I would like to move towards that, but yeah, that moment I can still remember where I was when I submitted that film to the YDAs, and I just by chance, it was the first year that we felt as a production company, when I was a producer, that we had enough reason
yeah,
to go to Cannes. Just myself, I was just going to Cannes just to see if I could we
yeah,
win any business of people wanting to service
yeah.
jobs in Ireland. And I think so. I already had a ticket to Cannes, and then two
Oh
weeks
my God.
before
Yeah,
the trip, I got this email that said you've been shortlisted. And yeah, it was
yeah,
massive. Like for me, I think I was with a bunch of friends on a weekend away, and like I just felt like, whoa,
that's the,
I wasn't expecting this, and like to be
yeah,
shortlisted is
yeah.
enough. um to just be nominated, it means you can write something next to your test
Yeah.
commercial, and it's no longer just a, a piece of content that disappears into the noise of stuff online. It now has got some kind of credibility, and that was just a shortlist. So I felt like I'd
Wow.
already like
Wow.
achieved
Yeah,
my
yeah.
purpose. Yeah, and then I went there. I went to Cannes. I'd never been to Cannes before. I was probably staying in the shittiest
Ever.
hotel in Cannes, and I think it was like a 30 euro a night. And and I was a producer for the first 4 days.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what to expect about the YDA, so I was telling people I had a producer business cards, and I was telling people I was a producer. And then on the Thursday night, because right now at that point, the test commercial I made, I was the only person that had seen
Absolutely.
it. Like no one. This wasn't online. Like Vimeo wasn't really that big back then. I don't know. I feel like uh, this was a completely. I was the only one who knew
You
I'd done
weren't
this.
selling yourself as a director because you feel like you weren't a
No.
director yet. So you were actually there.
And what do you say? Yeah, you don't. What do you say in Cannes? You don't walk around until you've won the award. You don't walk
No.
around saying, "I'm a director. I've done a test commercial."
But
They're
again,
like, "Dude, a guy in his garden with an iPhone can do a test commercial. Like
it's
that doesn't
true.
mean
It's true.
anything." And and so I remember there were some people that I met that week who I pitched myself as a producer to, and then the Thursday night came, and I went to the
And you
award
won.
show, and and I won, and I was really like not expecting it, and I went up onto the stage, and I had no one there that I knew. Like I was completely on my own, so I said this little speech into the darkness of the crowd, and I was literally the only guy in Cannes that I was
That's
there
fantastic.
with. And then for the next 2 days, I was telling everyone that I'd already met, oh, actually, I'm a director now. Um, you know,
I mean,
yeah, I
Sunday.
won something. Yeah, yeah. So really, it was just the yeah credibility in other people's eyes that I had something to show for the work that I'd done, and like I was still quite naive to the directing internationally. Like I knew in Ireland a couple of companies, and I knew the goal was to break the ceiling in Ireland, but suddenly companies were calling me from Germany, from UK, from Canada. I remember Marken Film are the biggest company in Germany, and I remember when they called, I didn't know who they were, and I had to like phone another friend, Stevie. Actually, I remember this conversation with Stevie Russell where he was the director who'd won before me, the year before me in Ireland. And I said, hey man, this company just reached out and they want to talk. Like, do you know them? And he was like, dude, if Mark and Film are interested, just say yes.
Whatever.
Like, don't say anything.
The oldest company in the world, by the way.
I didn't even know that. Okay, yeah. Well, I mean that was the start of it, and all of these companies were kind of, they were saying to me, right, we love this piece. Can you show us your portfolio? You know, what else have you done that can we rep you with? Yeah, and I was like, I only have this one piece of work. Like that's me, you know. So a lot of the companies said, you need to get busy. You need to spend the next 6 months doing another 2 of those. And once you've got 3 pieces on your reel, we can probably try and sell you to an agency on something. And Mark and Film were
I always told my young directors that. I was like, 1 is fantastic. If 1 wins, it shows who you are. But then people are going to ask you, okay, that 1 is really good, but what about the rest? You need to have 3. 3 is the perfect number. So you have to get another person that actually has the total confidence that you're going to actually be able to do it with a small budget or whatever it is, or you have to go shoot another couple of spec spots and just try and get yourself a reel. And 3 becomes a reel, you know.
I mean, I think I've got to actually say, this discipline of doing personal work, test work that shows what you want to do as a filmmaker, it's become the rule for my career. Because I did another spec commercial that year, which it was like, it was a branded content piece for a music festival, but they didn't ask for it. Like I forced it on them. I shot something at their festival without them really asking for the piece to be done. But it was a way of getting something made. And then I think I did a charity commercial after that, and I had my 3. And then very quickly I was signed in London. I was signed in France. I was signed in Germany, and to me that was like, I wanted to also work in the States, but I felt like this is a lot already. And I as a director, even though I'd been watching other directors for such a long time, I don't feel like you can develop your voice through watching other people. Like you can only really develop who you are by making piece after piece after piece. And I didn't really know who I was. And I started landing scripts for like VFX pieces, like heavily green screen studio pieces, and sometimes something comedy-esque, or, you know, like I was getting scripts in that I didn't really know if they were for me or not. And I had to learn that lesson, not like the hard way. You know, I did a few jobs where I was like, actually that didn't play to my strengths. Like I should not be saying yes to those kind of scripts.
That is a very bold statement, you know that, right? It's like not a lot of directors want to do everything sometimes. And I've known a lot of directors that think that they're really good comedy directors, but they're probably the best, you know, visual directors that I know, but they feel like they're comedy directors also, but they're not funny when they do comedy directors, right? I think the consciousness of what kind of director that you are is actually a really interesting one, which actually brings me to the question: what kind of director are you? What kind of director do you think you are, and is there a kind of director that you want to be? Double question.
So yeah, it's a tough question actually, because I think that you don't want to say who you think you are if you're not there yet. But
you can say that. That's good.
But yeah, no, I think that I think that I've discovered a bit more of a voice in the last 4 years. There were probably 4 years after I won the YDA where I didn't really know what I was trying to do, and maybe I hadn't learned enough lessons at that point to. Sometimes I feel like some scripts where I didn't execute them as well back then. Obviously, if I could do them now with 8 years of experience, even if they weren't so much my style, I could nail them because I've learned. But yeah, the director I want to be, well, the director I am now, I think that I've always been after this emotive, meaningful style of work. I feel like there's a lot that can be said in 60 seconds, and like since I started directing, 3 minutes and 5 minutes has become a lot more of an acceptable format. So that's really where I feel like I am now. I feel that there's important storytelling that can be done in the short format that I want to be doing, and that I think I'm in the process of proving in my reel now. So, I did a short film, a music video 2 years ago about a South African subculture of train riding. These kids that take crazy risks riding on top of moving trains and doing dance moves just to prove themselves to their friends. I did that piece 2 years ago as a music video, and I felt like it contained narrative, story development, even though it didn't have dialogue. And I think it's got some kind of emotion to it and some kind of surrealism. It's not a surreal project, but I feel like it's characters who are aware of something greater around them, and I love that. I want that. That was my Jaguar test commercial. It was this guy. There was a poem that the entire project. There was one line that the whole project was based on, which was, "If your a mind stretched by new dimensions can never go back." Sorry, I fucked it up. A mind stretched by new experiences can never go back to its old dimensions. And I just love that idea. Like, the more you see of the world, you can never go back to who you used to be, the smaller, non-traveled person. And yeah, for me, that's like, I want to show how people grow and how people are transformed in the stories of their lives. And that's a project that I'm working on right now. Which
do you want to stay in shorter formats? Do you think one day you want to move into scripted films?
Yeah, for sure. I'm being quite careful about how I get there, because I really feel like you don't have so many shots to get it right, and if you do a bad first film, I don't think you make a second. So
nowadays, because there's so much competition, and there's so much border crossing, right? So much more than ever. I mean, much more than the past. You can actually move from one to another. So your competition is not only in the world of scripted, is in the world of anything, any visual content, right? So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely changed, and I think for the better for people in my position have come from commercials, because I think there was I think there's directors now who are getting feature films based off music videos, and I don't think there's always been people who've been able to do that. In the 90s, maybe Spike Jonze or I guess Ridley Scott and like Michael Bay. I guess there's quite a few directors who have done commercials and then made the jump, but I feel like now it's maybe a little more, I don't know, you're able to build your brand as a director much more and be visible to people much more.
There are more places you can jump to, right? When propaganda with all those directors actually started, and it was kind of commercial directors that would move into music videos, or commercial directors that would start doing feature films. And if you go back, Adrian Lyne and Ridley Scott, but then at the end it was you could name them on a hand. Now it's very normal, right? Because now you have also TV series, and you have branded content, and you have things that are more contaminated, maybe, and that's interesting to me, because directors have much more to look forward to sometimes, but at the same time you also
but it's a feeding frenzy.
You also get worried about what will be my big move, but at a certain point you have to make it. At a certain point when it comes, you'll just have to make it.
I have so much respect for directors who have got into the feature film world and made a successful first-time film without having experience behind them. Like, I actually don't know how you do that. I've learned so much from commercials about camera language, about how sets work. Like, I wouldn't really want to start a first feature and be learning on the job about sets and how films run. I feel like there's too much pressure on you to not know what you're doing. Whereas commercials allow you to really understand everything in a very condensed point of view. Obviously, it doesn't teach you dialogue or like long form narrative development, but that's a different skill to being on set, which is essentially the
But
same skill.
if you believe in what you just said a few minutes earlier, which is, you know, you are as good as all the baggage or the luggage or the background that you have, right? You're as good at that, right? People say, I always tell my people, if I ever say I'm the best producer in the world, kill me, because you're never as good. You're never the best, right? You're always learning. Every job is different. Every life experience is different, and you kind of learn as you go along. It's the same with directing, and you actually said things that are very conscious of that, right? The director that you were 8 years ago is not the director that you are now. If you had known certain things, you wouldn't have made some mistakes, which is the mistakes that you learn from, right? I think, though, that moving from commercials, having learned certain things from the commercial world, which are banally the fact that you walk on the set and you're expecting everything to be sunny and you have, you know, want a flare in the camera, but then you actually go with it and you do it anyway. That way of dealing with the moment and dealing with the magic and all the other things that you have to deal with on a commercial set, really, I think, are the best way to learn about films. Because the only other thing that you have to learn is character development, you know, how to finesse a script, how to think in the long run that you're actually with other people for 6 weeks and not for 6 days. You know, it's like
I totally agree with you. I mean, the commercials, like, you know, working with ad agencies and clients, like, as much as directors love to bitch about that, it's extremely, it teaches you how to work in a team. And I don't think it's very different when you're on a film. You've just got a different type of client you're answering to, you know, whoever your investors are or your studio or whatever it is. So
it's interesting. And now films can be built in different ways, and, you know, obviously, and commercials also. So, you know, the whole weird, you know, mixing and matching of our world is of any world nowadays, right? So you sometimes have films feature films that have so much of an investor behind it that it's kind of like doing a branded content, you know, because there's the suffocation of it in it. But anyway, it's interesting to me that, you know, you've been very careful in the way you got into advertising. Advertising kind of became your world, and you're being very careful about your jump. So the next jump is going to be an interesting one. I think you will probably try and figure out things that you're trying out with your short films and stuff in advertising, and then you're going to learn things to then slowly move into that. I think it's very interesting the way you are taking steps, you know, in your growth.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, I don't, you know, a lot of people talk about it like making the jump, like once you do that, you're on the other side. And I don't feel like that. I think that I really love the commercials industry, and I would like to be able to continue working in commercials. And if I'm lucky enough to do a film that takes me out of the game for a year and a half or 2 years, it's probably going to be hard to get back into the commercials industry, judging on how fast it moves. But I don't want to let go of it. I like really feed off the energy of, you know, pitching and the potential of a new project that comes in so quickly, and you can do something so beautiful and intense, and then be over with it in you know,
whatever,
2 months time.
Yeah, it's like and that's what I find interesting. It's like, to me, that is, we're making mini films, right? We're condensing it all into the I don't know, 6 weeks or 7 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever it is, you know, from the time we actually get a call and then we win it, and then the things that you learn about shooting and look and feel and photography and storytelling and how to tell a story in short amount of time is something that you will bring into the other world, right? It's much more difficult to do the other passing, right? The film scripted into commercials. It has always been much more difficult that way than the other way, right? So the people who made the jump the other direction have been in general have bigger problems in trying to tell a story. try to condense into one shot two things, which is something that we kind of always try and do when we do commercials. But anyway, that said, it's actually it's interesting to me. It's like, do you think, I'm going to ask you just a question about advertising, but do you think you are niched? You've been niched as a director? Because when you actually explained and described what kind of director that you are, right? And because I actually have known you from afar, right? We're just getting to know each other, and we had never met. You had always been, for me, a director that was a car commercial director, right? It's like you are an automotive guy, right? And you do that really well. But when you actually described yourself, you didn't say that, which means that you don't want to be niched in that world.
Yeah.
It's
I
not
mean,
like I'm just wondering.
No. You have completely nailed like what I've been dealing with over the last couple of years was that obviously working with Mark and Film in Germany got me quite a few car commercials early on in my career. And then I found it quite hard to get other kinds of commercials because car commercials are often quite repetitive, even though you're on a beautiful location, you're playing with amazing gear, you're not telling as much of a story as a heartfelt documentary piece where you have to really get into the character or something. And so I started realizing, I mean, this will go back to one of the things that I said earlier, that test commercials or test projects have become so important to me is because I started doing car commercials, and I realized that if I wanted to do anything outside of car commercials, it would come from me doing personal work that showed what else I could do, because I wasn't getting those projects through scripts, through pitches. Every script I got was for a car. And so I think I took the foot off the gas for about 2 years when I signed in London. I sat around thinking, now that I have these 3 companies working for me, they're going to find the scripts that I'm looking for. And like the lesson that I was trying to tell the directors back in Ireland at the small point in our company's history is exactly the same as if you're repped in 5 different countries by major companies. For me, it was like, if I want to do emotional storytelling, I've got to go and find those stories myself. So yeah, I think it was 2016 that I went off and started making a surf test film. It was going to be a test commercial about a surfer. I was very inspired by the Samsung work that Mark Malloy was doing, and Elliot Rausch did one of them, and there was I think AG Rojas did one, and there was like this really cool surfing culture that they were tapping into, and I was like, I know this from South Africa. I've got a network of people who surf and people who make films in South Africa. Like, why don't I make a test commercial about this? And then I realized pretty quickly, I started working with a friend, a friend of my brother's, Adam, who is now the title of the film. There's a short film on my website called Adam, and it's about him dealing with cancer. And it started off as a surf film, and I intentionally wanted the first minute of the film to be a surf film in disguise. And then you realize it's a cancer story, and it's a survival story that is that trades on surfing as a way as a coping mechanism that he used to really get himself through the hardest thing he's ever done in his life. And for me, that was like, that's who I want to be. I don't only want to tell documentary stories, but I feel like I can shoot the world in a beautiful way, and like put a visual lens on some of these real stories that I run into. And that, even though that film I'm super proud of, I don't feel like it's led me to too much in commercials yet. I've seen 1 or 2 surfing related scripts, but nothing that really jumped out at me. And then obviously the music video, that the train surfing one, was another thing where I was like, let me use this as an opportunity to get away from just car stories. And then right now I was sitting in lockdown and I started working on this film about a choreographer, quite well-known guy who's the director of the Netherlands Dance Theatre. He's the lead choreographer and artistic director. His name's Paul Lightfoot, and he lost his father to coronavirus in April. And the story, I wanted to do a story. I was actually looking for someone to choreograph a story about a dancer who's been told to stop moving. When we all got told to stop moving by governments across the world, I thought there was a really interesting paradox in like the people who are affected by that the most. And when I told Paul about this, I told him that I was looking for an angle into something more of a conflict. Like I'd been FaceTime casting, and I'd found a lot of ballet dancers sitting in Copenhagen, where I live now, who were sitting in the sun drinking rosé, and they were like, it's kind of a bummer that we can't dance, but life's not that bad. And I thought, there's not enough of a story there. And then I was looking for Paul. I took a real gamble and asked Paul if he would choreograph this idea that wasn't really even an idea yet. But he said, well, look, I would like to say goodbye to my father through a dance, because I wasn't allowed to go to the hospital, and he was alone for 5 days, and he died without me there. And I never got a chance to say goodbye. So I wanted to do that on this film. So he's choreographed something over Zoom with a local dancer, well, a very, very talented Danish ballet dancer, and I'm about to put that out this week. But I feel like that is again, like it's a personal project that it's been so rewarding already. It's not live yet, but it's I think all of these things are ways for me to escape the niche that you asked about. Even though as soon as lockdown's over, I can't wait to get another car script in. Like I would love to be shooting another car commercial as soon as I can, but I feel like I can do both if I can do enough work to show that.
I actually think, William, it's very interesting because you have a will to learn, which is actually very clear in the conversation that we just had. And I think it's interesting that there has been another one of the directors that I actually talked to in these chats that actually has the same theory that you have, which is to get yourself out of your niche because you don't feel like you're nicheable for certain things. You should actually go and look for the stories. You should go and try things out for yourself, which is actually very interesting because the time period that we're in today allows you to do that. Because when I wanted to be a director many years ago, and I ended up becoming a producer, which is exactly the opposite of you, I couldn't be a director, right? So now directors can actually go and do things. They can actually show the stories that they want to tell. But that is very interesting to me, that you are looking for those stories, right? You actually want to tell them, and the way you describe yourself is very much about the storytelling part more than specifically the actual, typology, right? You don't care necessarily whether you're shooting a surfer or a story of two people in a house or somebody's car. Regardless, is the story that kind of attracts you.
And I feel like there's something to do with there's some kind of longevity in that principle, because I think that trends come and go so fast in commercials. I've seen, like in the 8 years that I've been doing it, I've seen dark and moody come and go. I've seen like flashy and textured come and go. I've seen I don't know where we are now, but I think right now there's a kind of poppy comedy, a visual comedy that's really, there's some amazing commercials being made in that style, but I feel like
we also had that moment where everything looked like it was shot like in your home in the worst, ugliest way possible.
Everything was like log C, flat.
Exactly.
Yeah, there was that look too. But I feel like the directors who keep working 20 years from now are the guys who put story first, because you can't really criticize story. Like a well-told story it's still meaningful 10, 15 years later, and so your reel is still powerful. And that's why, you know, I look at, I don't know, Martin de Thurah as an example of like one of the best emotive storytellers out there, who's done cars, he's done he's done fashion, he's done everything, but it's always telling a story. And like for me, that's
but even
that's
telling
the
a story
compass.
in a shot, like literally telling a story by
Yeah.
composing a shot with the right people in the right place, saying the right things. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is like, it's true. I mean, I think that's kind of what I like about this conversation. And I would actually continue talking for hours, but I think we need to actually at a certain point finish this chat. And honestly, I actually really enjoyed it, William. I'm
Thanks, Karim. So yeah, it was
very
great to talk.
very happy that we did this. And so I wish you the best of everything. Thank you for chatting with us and with me. And I'm sure I'll see you soon. And I can't wait to see your film.
That'd be great. Thank you. I'll send it to you guys as soon as it's. Give me, yeah. We're busy grading this week, so it's just out.
Say hi to Denmark and give a big kiss to your little kid. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks.
Ciao, ciao.
Stay well, Karim.